Welcome to the show. I have a great show planned for you this week. Later on, I'll have with me Sam Petsonk, who is a candidate for Attorney General in the state of West Virginia. We'll be talking all about his candidacy. And first, we'll start with some of our usual features. And let's talk about politics, why don't we, since we're going to be talking about that later on. And crazy week on the national scene, of course, for so many reasons. Starting off Monday in Iowa, the Democratic caucuses, of course, the app that was purchased, I guess, by the Iowa Democratic Party didn't exactly work the way it was supposed to, and there were some coding errors apparently, and so the results didn't come in exactly when they might normally come in. But I want to say something about that. You know, we all on a daily basis, kind of depend upon technology these days. Whether it be our phones, our computers, even technological aspects of our cars. And when they go bad, we're kind of stuck sometimes, and we're all, subject to that. So it wasn't an ideal scenario, but it's not like this is something that the party created or developed. They went out and purchased this from a company that develops apps and that type of thing. Maybe the backup plan wasn't quite what it should be, but the bottom line is the results ultimately got out, just not in the way that they were supposed to. But certainly an interesting start to the week, to say the least. But let's all be a little bit slow to criticize, because I know when my phone goes down, and it happens at times. It's not I didn't make the phone, but the daggone thing goes down sometimes, and I feel lost sometimes without it, because we've become so dependent upon technology that we don't always have a backup plan or backup, or maybe even plan C that we might need, and it can really cripple us sometimes. So that happens to all of us from time to time. Nonetheless, Iowa caucuses and the results interesting, particularly because former Vice President Biden finishing fourth in those particular results, it appears. And it will be interesting to watch what happens now. Next up, the New Hampshire primary next week, and then a couple more states to go. Nevada, South Carolina, and then Super Tuesday in early March. And there's going to be a lot of movement here, I think, in the next couple of weeks. I don't like to talk a lot about national politics because there's enough people that do that, but I find this race to be particularly fascinating, because I'm sitting here saying, I don't know who's going to come out of this daggone thing. It's really hard to say. So it's something that's interesting to watch and educational to watch, I think, in a lot of ways. And then, of course, the State of the Union address by President Trump on Tuesday, and a lot of, controversy, so to speak, surrounding that. Initially, the president coming out and not shaking Speaker Pelosi's hand when she extended her hand to shake his hand when he handed her a copy of the speech. And it was interesting because, when he first came out, I was watching her to see what she was going to do. And she was standing, clapping, had a smile on her face. It wasn't until he refused to shake her hand that things turned sour very quickly. And then at the end, of course, she ripped up the copy of the speech, and a lot of attention given to that, because it was a very dramatic moment that was being watched by a lot of people. I guess the bottom line is this. I wasn't crazy about anybody's actions, to be quite honest. There are people that aren't my favorite people in politics. There are people that aren't my favorite people in my practice of law. There are people that aren't my favorite people in business. There are people that aren't my favorite people just to see around town. But I still try to act like a cordial adult and a courteous person when I see those people, if I can. I may not go out of my way to speak, but if I have an interaction, especially in a public setting, you want to try to set a good example as best you can. Now, we all screw up at times. I know I have screwed up at times in my life on that, but hopefully maybe everybody can learn some lessons of the way to be. And then, of course, the following day, the impeachment trial of President Trump came to a conclusion. Interestingly, former presidential candidate Mitt Romney, on one of the counts, voted with the Democratic Party senators in favor of conviction. But the rest was along party lines. President Trump acquitted of the charges. So how that will affect things going forward, I'm not sure that it will. I think that President Trump's supporters are behind him all the way, and those that are against him are against him all the way. And I'm not sure it changed anybody's mind about anything in terms of the actual proceedings. So it's over with, and I think a lot of people are glad for that. So again, very busy week there on the national scene. Hopefully things will maybe calm down a little bit. But it sure doesn't seem like that's going to happen, at least through November. On a statewide level, something also worth noting, which is that in the Senate right now, in the West Virginia State Senate, is a bill that's proposing that an intermediate court of appeals be established in the state of West Virginia. And this is something I've followed somewhat closely, being a lawyer. It's likely going to pass through out of the Senate, and then it'll be up to the House to determine what's going to happen with it. And here's why I bring it up, is that according to anyone that's asked, including the Supreme Court, including lawyers on both sides of the fence, including just about anyone you talk to, we don't need an intermediate court of appeals in the state of West Virginia. An intermediate court of appeals is a level between our circuit court judges and the Supreme Court that would hear appeals. And the way that's currently proposed to be one in the northern part of the state, one in the southern part of the state. The problem is that it really slows down the process. And the one thing that I don't care what you're involved in terms of a lawsuit, unless you're a big out-of-state corporation, which I doubt many of the viewers here on this show are, but unless you are, what you want is your case to get through the system and to have some type of finality to it, some type of conclusion, and know what the result is. And an intermediate court just slows things down because it's another layer that things have to go through, and it can take an extra year. And whether you're somebody that's had something happen to you and you had to file a lawsuit, or you're the one that's being sued, what you don't want is it hanging out there forever. You want the daggone thing to be over. And an intermediate court of appeals just drags it out further. And the only ones that like it are mostly the out-of-state insurance companies that want to hold on to their money longer and keep it in their bank accounts while it's processing through the courts. And that's who really wants it. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is pushing this at the request of insurance companies and other large corporations because they want to hold on to their money longer. Everybody here, studies have shown our courts aren't backlog, our courts write opinion, our Supreme Court writes an opinion in every case, they accept every case. In the old days, it used to be, when I first started practicing law, not that long ago, but it seems that way for me now, 20 years ago or so, you had to petition to the Supreme Court to see if they would hear your case on appeal. It's not that way anymore. There's an automatic right of appeal now. The Supreme Court looks at every case in which there's an appeal filed. So there's really just no need for this. And so I would certainly urge people to contact their legislators, especially members of the House of Delegates, to encourage them to vote against the bill that would set forth an intermediate court of appeals. Here's a legal tip for you this week as well, which is that the Real ID Act goes into effect on October 1st. I've been thinking about this for a while, but it's really come to light now and hit home for me because my birthday's next month. So, and this is one of the years, because I'll be 45, that my driver's license gets renewed every 5 years. And so it's time for me to renew my driver's license. But this year, I can't just do it by electronically like I do sometimes and get it mailed to me. I'd say I'll just take the same picture because I don't have a little star on the corner of my driver's license. And that star is going to mean something. The Real ID Act started being talked about and implemented, like 15 years ago, I think 2005. It was in the aftermath of 9/11, but it's taken this long for everybody to kind of get things together to figure out how it's going to work. But this is the deadline, this year, October 1st. If you don't have that little star on your driver's license, you can't enter federal buildings. Big deal for me because I have to go into federal courthouses, but also you cannot fly on an airplane if you don't have that little star on your license. So whether your license expires this year or not, if you don't have that little star as of October 1st, you will not be able to fly on an airplane. So make sure you do that. Make sure you get that new Real ID, it's called, and get the star on your license. If you're somebody that wants to be able to take a trip somewhere or fly to an event or whatever you need to do, or go into a federal building, which you might need to be able to do at times also, whether it be a courthouse or another federal building, make sure you get that star on your driver's license. So I'm going to go down to the DMV and take care of that here sometime before my birthday next month. And I'll give you a quote here this week as well. I always like to do that. And this one comes from Robert Kennedy, of course, former Attorney General of the United States. And later on the show, we're going to have someone running for Attorney General here in West Virginia. I thought it'd be appropriate to have a quote from Robert Kennedy. He said, "All of us might wish at times that we lived in a more tranquil world, but we don't. And if our times are difficult and perplexing, so are they challenging and filled with opportunity." Things never seem to be quite tranquil. They weren't back when he was Attorney General, and I still think they still aren't in many ways right now, and perhaps even more turbulence right now, especially in our political world. But I think his point about it presenting opportunity is a great lesson and a great part of that quote, which is that when things are turbulent, we can look around and say, okay, maybe we want some change. Maybe we want something different, whether it be in our political world, maybe be in our personal lives even. And there's always opportunity there. So when things are not tranquil, it's a good time to say, what can I change? What can be done differently to perhaps make things a little bit better? So with that being said, we're going to take a break. And when I come back, I'll have with me Sam Petsonk, who is a candidate for Attorney General here in the state of West Virginia. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Disasters happen. Pick the team that takes care of them all. Powered by offices in Wheeling, Morgantown, and Pittsburgh, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration is ready to handle any size emergency at a moment's notice. We have the right people, knowledge, and equipment to respond 24 hours a day.
I'm Bob Huggins. When disaster strikes your home or business, tell your insurance provider you prefer the restoration company the Mountaineers call. Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration.
Recommended by the highest authorities. Danoon Lumber.
It's like a bad one's coming. Yeah. Right?
Welcome back to the show. This is my favorite time each week when I have a guest with me, and this week's no different. I have with me Sam Petsonk, who is a candidate for Attorney General here in the West Virginia. And Sam, it's great to have you here on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jamie.
Had to travel a ways to get here. I know you're not from this part of the state, but you've been making your way up here and talking to folks.
Quite a lot. You know, I was born in Morgantown and I grew up out kind of in between Mount Morris and Blacksville, if you know that neck of the woods. So years back, I spent a lot of time in this part of the world, but you're right. I live down in Fayette County now, and I'm a labor lawyer, and I've had a law practice that ran me between Beckley and Charleston and occasionally up to Morgantown too.
You mentioned Mount Morris and the Blacksville area. I mean, a lot of folks from the Ohio Valley here, travel down to Morgantown for the WVU games and such, and pick up their kids from school, whatever it may be. And you always see that Mount Morris sign. You know you're getting close. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's and there's a lot of traffic between between this part of the valley and down there. I think people moving back and forth, working the mines and things like that. I noticed here in Wheeling, I talk to people that have lived down in Marshall County, western Monongalia County.
So you actually grew up really pretty close there to Morgantown.
Yes, sir.
And then, one of the things that I found interesting about your background is that, of course, you went to law school and then ultimately went to work for one of our most famous senators here in West Virginia, Senator Byrd.
Yeah, I did both of those things. Sequence was a little bit different, but I worked for Senator Byrd for the last little over 3 years that he was in the United States Senate. And I staffed him on labor and energy policy and also on economic development. So I had a real fascinating sort of work portfolio for Senator Byrd.
And then law school after that? And
yes, sir.
Let's talk about Senator Byrd and we'll get the decision to go to law school. But, working with someone who was in the Senate representing West Virginia for so long, and you're there at the tail end of his career, what do you gain from someone like that has that wealth of experience and making the laws the highest level of our country? What do you draw from that?
Well, I can say that I personally drew patience. I was 22 years old when I went to work for Senator Byrd, and he was sort of at the opposite end of life, and he was very gracious. And I had worked in Wyoming County down around Mullins and Beckley before going to work for Senator Byrd, and I'd worked with coal miners, and we saw that the retirees health care, the black lung program, there was a lot of problems in the miners accessing care and benefits, and I wanted to see change, and Senator Byrd kind of set me down and he said, look, we have a powerful process to achieve change, and if you follow that process and you understand the rules of the Senate, you can achieve a great deal, but you need to study and you need to understand. And within a couple of years, I was able to make a good measure of progress. We working for Senator Byrd, I staffed him on a major overhaul to the federal black lung benefits program, which has brought lifetime black lung benefits and health insurance to thousands of people, families across West Virginia and the country. We worked on some major reforms to federal coal mine health and safety regulations after the Upper Big Branch disaster. And so I learned from Senator Byrd that when you study the rules and you work with everybody who cares about your concerns, you can achieve a great deal. And I was full of blood and guts, when I went up there, and I owe a lot to Senator Byrd for steadying my hand.
And of course, we mentioned you went to law school then, and ultimately went to work for a company called Mountain State Justice, which is a company, so to speak, a law firm, but it's organized as a company that tries to help people that are West Virginians who are consumers and minors and things of that nature.
It's a nonprofit legal services organization, that's right, and you know a lot of what they have done, most of what they had done for many years was representing consumers who had been overcharged, say on their mortgage or on their car payments or things of that nature. And they brought me on for a very specific purpose, which was to try to start a legal services program for working people, employment law. That's what I do. I'm a labor and employment lawyer, and so I was lucky to get some support there to start up a program other than the union movement, which is still a very powerful movement in West Virginia, but outside of the union movement, you know, there's not a lot of nonprofit legal assistance for working people. So what we do, you know, we handle a lot of layoff cases, retirees, benefits, people who are struggling with accessing compensation. A lot of it is black lung benefits that we've handled cases for coal miners across this state. You know just as well as anybody up here in the Ohio Valley. I mean, we've had tens of thousands of people who have lost their part of their pensions or their retirement health care. I know I've worked to represent a large number of the Consol Energy retirees and other retirees all across the mining industry who have struggled to hold on to the health insurance that they worked to earn throughout their careers. And that work means an immense amount to me, Jamie. It really does. I've been honored to get to do it.
Well, you know, you talk about the pension issue, and you're right, that's a big one. I think here and around the state, you know, and that's what you alluded to there, that people feel like, you know, this was part of the deal. You know, part of the deal was I will work for you and you will pay me this amount of money, plus I get this pension for when I retire, and then it's not there. These people, they try to take it away from them, and that's really hurt people.
It has, and our federal laws need to be overhauled and strengthened, and I have represented people in class claims and other sorts of claims in bankruptcy court. Many of our companies, you know, have had to resort to federal bankruptcy court, and so we've hauled off and fought to take back what people have earned in the bankruptcy court, and it's a hard slog. You know, I've represented a lot of the Black Jewel miners. If you followed that case down in Harlan County, Kentucky, and Fayette County, West Virginia, we had miners whose company went bankrupt, a month's worth of paychecks bounced, and these fellows were off at the beach. It was a miner's vacation. Come to find out, no money in the bank. We've got to undo our vacation plans. You know, people have been really disadvantaged and harmed when they lose that support, when they lose wages or lose retirement health care. And it's a major, so we need federal reforms, and I know that Senator Manchin has been working, and I know that other senators are working to try to overhaul our federal bankruptcy laws to protect working people, but there's a lot we can do in West Virginia. You probably remember this Wheeling and Weirton years ago took the bull by the horns and tried to form the ESOP. You know, that was a very creative solution to some trouble that the steel industry was having way back in the early 80s. That's the kind of creativity that our state should really promote, I think. Now, look, that was no solution is perfect, and I know that the steel and the ESOP continue to struggle for a long time, but point being, our state should be providing leadership. We have an attorney general whose job it is to serve as the people's lawyer, to vindicate the interest that we have in receiving the benefits that we've earned as a state and protecting our consumers and our small businesses, and there's a lot of work to do in that regard.
We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll continue speaking with Sam Petsonk about why he's running for Attorney General and what his plan is. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Tractor trailers are some of the most dangerous vehicles on the road. There are federal rules for load sizes, driver's hours, and maintenance for a reason. When big rigs don't follow these rules, entire families can be torn apart. We have the talent and the resources to take on these large companies. Hopefully, through our work, families are being helped and trucking companies are getting the message about safety. Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Hi, Banks did great today. He looks great after his spa day.
For being such a good boy, we'll take these two.
Great.
Thanks to my free Kasasa cashback checking account from Belmont Savings Bank, my Kasasa cash is paying for my dog's treats.
Kasasa pays you cash back on everyday debit card purchases, plus refunds on ATM withdrawal fees nationwide. Open your account today at Belmont Savings Bank to take back banking and enjoy monthly cash rewards with Kasasa.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with my guest this week, Sam Petsonk, who's a Democratic candidate for Attorney General here in the state of West Virginia. And, Sam, talking about your background a little bit there before we took a break, but let's talk about now why you're running for Attorney General. Well, it's first time running for office and running for a statewide office, big chunk of territory to cover there.
It is, Jamie. And in the last 15 years, my work has taken me across this state, and I've seen a lot. I've learned a lot from what the poultry farmers over in the Eastern Panhandle who have struggled for a long time, to the coal mines in the south, to the coal mines in the old, manufacturing that we have up here in the northern part of the state. I've seen a lot of people struggle for a long time, and we've fought hard and we've turned the tide. We've got more people with better health care today than we did 10, 15 years ago. But for the last 8 years, I've seen too many people lose out when I know that the Attorney General, who advises the state on legal matters and who is there to serve as the people's lawyer, the Attorney General should be there fighting for us. There was a time when our Attorney General and our state government were fighting to help to save the steel industry. And I was talking before about back in the 80s, we had the Tri-State Conference on Steel, and we had an effort to form the ESOP, and we had some real dynamic development that is paying dividends in Wheeling in the Ohio Valley now. Well, where's that kind of thinking? We have had no leadership. We have had the addiction crisis spiral out of control. The overdose rate has doubled in our state over the last 8 years. I've got 2 little boys, Jamie. I know you have kids too. And if I fear for what our children's lives will be like if we don't get in there and provide some leadership and deliver some real results for our people. And I'm talking about representing working families, small businesses. I'm talking about helping people through long-term recovery. Addicts who are clean in West Virginia, who are succeeding with recovery, those folks have a right to accommodation and support. We got to deliver for them and turn the tide in our state. And frankly, I had a lot of friends come to me and say, these problems are too big for us individually. We need some new leadership, and would you give this office a run?
So why you? Why are you the right guy for the job to take care of those things?
Well, I'll be 36 years old if I'm elected to this office. So I'm not running because I think I'm the oldest or the wisest lawyer in the state of West Virginia, Jamie. But I'm running because people I think have seen, and the folks who came and asked me to run said over the last 15 years we've seen, whether it's on reforming the Black Lung program and bringing benefits to thousands of people who really deserve them, or whether it's fighting for coal miners. We've represented hundreds, probably thousands now of coal miners who've been laid off in the downturn in coal, and help those guys get some transition assistance, some money to get back to school, get back stabilized, find new jobs. We have worked to bring broadband. I've worked with some counties trying to bring better infrastructure. Part of the job of the Attorney General. Sleep at the switch. He hasn't been out there helping to bring the basic infrastructure that our communities need. And we've worked with these county governments. We know how to make those connections. I do. And so I think that we can, that's the kind of current relevant experience that we need in this office to turn the tide for our state.
Well, you make a compelling argument there, and I think that those watching can understand that. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come up here on the show. I know, like I said, it's a long trip for you, but really wish you the best on the campaign trail, and sounds like you got a plan.
Well, hey, when it comes to public education, when it comes to health care, when it comes to fighting the addiction crisis, and when it comes to fighting for workers, people all across this state have seen that we've done it. I've done it. You got to stand and deliver, and that's what this race is about. I thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.
We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll conclude with a little bit of sports. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show. When bad things happen, you need a law firm that has a record of superior results. A firm that is ready to fight for you when you can't fight alone. When you need help, Bordas & Bordas will answer the call.
Bordas & Bordas, fighting for justice. When reviewing your oil and gas offers or royalty check statements, do you wonder, am I being offered a fair amount? Do I feel comfortable reading the statement? Do I have peace of mind? If you answered no to these questions, you need Bordas Mineral Management. Our passion is helping mineral owners protect and expand their mineral wealth. Our examiners tell you whether you're being treated fairly and getting paid what is rightfully yours. Bordas Mineral Management. Be protected. Have peace of mind.
Welcome back to the show. It's time to talk sports, and we'll start off with the Super Bowl. You know, I didn't think it was the most well-played game that I've ever watched, but it was entertaining. I mean, certainly to see the Niners up by 10 points and then have the Chiefs score 3 touchdowns in a row there to close out the game. But, you know, I thought Patrick Mahomes was just too good when it mattered. I mean, that's kind of what I said last week on this show. I said, you know, I think he'll be the difference maker, and he was. Chiefs also had a 100-yard rusher in Williams, which I didn't quite expect. But, you know, they've been a perennial playoff team, and you see those teams that they get close, and then ultimately they make it. The 49ers, I think, are a team that can maybe get there ultimately. But like I said, it was an entertaining game. Some controversy surrounding the halftime show, and I'll just leave that where it is. But I thought it was an entertaining game, an entertaining halftime show, entertaining all around. So anyway, speaking of professional football, Steelers have signed general manager Kevin Colbert to a new deal through the 2021 draft at least. So he'll be here for this year's draft, all of this season, and then next year's draft at least. Big question mark there because he's kind of taking it year to year right now, and he's been a big part of what the Steelers have been able to do to have successful teams over the last couple decades. So good to see him back in the mix. Mountaineers basketball still drawing a lot of excitement. You know, I think they're in a good position right now for a number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament at least, but I think they can get as high as a 2. Especially if they have a strong next month. They'll have some opportunities here. They face both Kansas next Wednesday at home, and then Baylor on the road. So the next 10 days, they got the number 1 team, number 3 team in the country they'll be facing. So that's certainly an opportunity there to make some noise and to really move up in the rankings from where they even are now. And believe it or not, baseball season's just around the corner. Pitchers and catchers report for the Pirates on Monday. I know it's only February, but February 10th is the day that pitchers and catchers report, and so spring training will be getting underway. So, you know, Pirates aren't expected to have a great season, but sometimes teams surprise, and you know, maybe some young guys can step up and do things that we're not expecting. And speaking of Pittsburgh sports, Antonio Brown with an interview this week on The Fan in Pittsburgh on the radio show, and he actually alluded to how much he misses Pittsburgh, and it was interesting to see because he talked about how he was kind of sorry about some things happened, but then in the next breath he kind of blamed others. So I don't think there's much chance. I would say the chances are probably slim and none that Antonio Brown will be back in Pittsburgh, but he at least made a little soft pitch for that. But I just don't think it's going to happen. That's all the time we have this week. I appreciate Sam Petsonk being here. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you again next time on the Jamie Bordas Show.